The move 4 months ago to send more than 230 Venezuelan migrants to a maximum security prison in El Salvador known as CECOT took a staggering toll, not only on the men themselves but also on their families. The men were released to Venezuela as part of a prisoner swap without much explanation, and they and their relatives have begun sharing the details of their ordeal. Juan José Ramos describes the physical torture he says he endured during his incarceration at CECOT as his mother, Lina Ramos, explains the emotional agony of not knowing whether she'd ever see her son again. André Blanco Bonilla and his mother, Carmen Bonilla, still struggle to make sense of how they could have been caught up in something like this when Blanco didn't have a criminal record and, in fact, had a deportation order to be sent back to his home country. Wilmer Vega Sandia, who had migrated to the United States to find work that would help him pay for his mother's cancer treatment, says he prayed every day of his incarceration that he'd make it home in time to hold her in his arms without providing evidence. The U.S. government branded them all Tren de Aragua gang members. The worst of the worst, a first of its kind. Case-by-case examination shows how the government knew a majority of them had not been convicted of a crime in the U.S., and only a few had serious convictions such as assault and gun possession. A dozen or so had criminal records abroad. Nearly half, 118 of the more than 230 men, including Ramos, came to the U.S. legally and were deported in the middle of their immigration cases. He entered the U.S. with a CBP-1 appointment, a program used to try to bring order to the soaring numbers of migrants attempting to enter the country. At least 166 of the more than 230 men had tattoos, including Blanco, Ramos and Vega. The investigation found that the government relied heavily on tattoos to tie the men to the Venezuelan gang. Even though Tren de Aragua experts say tattoos are not reliable indicators of gang affiliation. A handful of the men, including Vega, had been granted voluntary departures by an immigration judge, which means they had agreed to pay their way home to Venezuela. Instead, they were deported to El Salvador.